What? Hello? There's nobody else speaking but me as far as I can tell, unless it's broken.
Alright, good. Total silence.
I don't know what's going on.
Reicher.
Yep. Alright, anyway, can you guys hear me?
Yeah, that's you now, man. A minor technical issue about this.
Anyway, can you guys hear me?
Yeah, that's you now, man. A minor technical issue about this.
Anyway, can you guys hear me?
Yeah, that's you now, man. A minor technical issue about this.
Anyway, can you guys hear me?
Yeah, that's you. I don't know.
Alright. Yeah. Anyway, everyone, welcome to this week's episode of Between Two Keepstars. I am your host, Reicher, and with me here is Dex. Today we have a very special show. Also, if I sound like I'm, in a tunnel or very low quality, it's because, right before the stream started, my laptop decided to stop working, and therefore I am broadcasting via my phone. So apologies. So yeah, apologies for my poor audio quality. This week, instead of doing our normal war stuff, we're deciding we're going to do a CSM roundtable because CSM elections are coming up soon, and I figured, hey, let's give a platform for would-be CSM members to share their stuff. So with me and Dex today, we have White Orchid.
There you go.
And Dr. Spodumain. I said that right, correct?
Close enough. It's one of the weird ones that people seem to struggle to pronounce, yet it's something in the game and has been forever.
Yeah. I think it's because everyone says Spod all the time. They're not used to saying the whole word.
Yeah, that works too, bro.
Yeah. We just call you Spod for the rest of the night.
Yeah. I'm going to be real. I was about to write Dr. Spod in the title, but I was like, no, I got to do Dr. Spodumain. So yeah, guys, tell us a bit about yourselves.
Yeah, hey guys. So White Orchid here. I've been playing EVE since about 2008. Done quite a lot since then. Started off with PvE mission running, DD site running, exploration, that kind of thing. Spent a bit of time in Eve Uni. Started kind of small scale FCing and that kind of thing. Then moved on to Waffles, where I spent the last kind of about 5 years. Became a director for the last 4 of it, and then recently just moved on to Volta, kind of small to medium scale fleet PvP at the moment.
And I am one of those quiet weirdos that has spent the last few years lurking in the shadows and tweaking with tools and whatnot. While I've dabbled in a little bit of the whole universe, been to low sec, been to null sec, done wormholes, done this, done that. My sort of critical platform is about third-party development and stuff like that. Not necessarily directly stuff that's going on in the game, but I'm not completely ignorant of that stuff either.
Cool. And I'm Reicher514. I'm also one of the candidates. I've spent like 90% of my time in nullsec. I did a brief stint in Waffles and palled around in lowsec. I'm not gonna say that I left Waffles. I got kicked. Then I went and I joined Test for like 2 years. Had a bunch of fun there. Then came back to PanFam when we reformed Concordiate. And now I'm a member of Blackwater USA and currently fighting in this war.
All right, now I'm next, Hunter. I've been playing for, I don't know, on and off for like 10 years. I used to be an FCE in Bombersbar. I've done a variety of different things until I'm bored. I'm also a streamer, Scottish Dicks as well, currently with CapF. I'm currently a CapF lifer. And I'm also write for New Eden Post as well. It's all very exciting. So yes, nice to meet you all, lads.
Wait, Dex, are you also running?
No, a writer. It's the accent again, writer.
Real quick, do the candidates want to quickly, I guess, go over some of the main points of their platforms and what they want to advocate for? I'm not going to say do because, again, the CSM can't really force CCP to do anything, but they can very strongly say, hey, you should do this.
What do you mean the CSM isn't all-powerful and has ultimate power to decide everything that ever happens? I thought that's what we were here for, right?
Clearly, man, that's the whole point of the CSM.
People do kind of think that. I think it's a little bit of a I like people's ambition when you see people's posts and they're saying I want to do this to the game and this is how I want to improve faction warfare, for example, and that's like their only focus, and then CCP is like, well, we're not doing anything with faction warfare this year. So ultimately it is CCP that kind of decide the kind of top level direction of the game, and I think that's why it's important. Like if you read my post, it doesn't necessarily say I really want to do this very specific thing for Eve. It's more I feel it's important to have kind of a variety of candidates that are on the CSM. It's important to have null block people. It's important to have wormhole corps. It's important to have low sec, RP, whatever, or from everywhere in Eve. But it's also, I think, important to have someone who is almost kind of like a middle ground. So yes, I am in a small kind of organization. I do a lot of null PvP, but I'm not in a large null block. I'm kind of considered an independent candidate. I don't have a particular agenda, and I've spent a lot of time doing lots of other things in Eve. So almost able to act as a devil's advocate when someone comes along and introduces a fantastic change from CCP side that would affect null, for instance, but maybe another area of the game might completely break because of it, and kind of having an overall view of how that might, how serious those changes might affect things, I think is quite important as almost like a mediator.
Your turn, Spud.
Sorry, what were you saying, Dex?
Yeah, sorry, I'm just trying to jump.
Never mind. I'm still learning voices.
Anyway, learning voices. I don't think me and Dex or anyone else sound too familiar.
That's why I could never be a spy or talking on TeamSpeak, because like my accent is so distinct. But,
Just a little bit.
yeah. Going on what Reicher was saying. Obviously, give you the opportunity. I'll put you under the spotlight first. Spud. I'm just going to call you Spud tonight. Is that all right?
That's fine. That's what everyone calls me. It's the preferred name.
Cool. So obviously,
Daddy calls me Dr. Spud.
Obviously you are campaigning. So what is your kind of main focus on kind of influence in terms of CSM? What is the corporate term, the mission statement?
If you want to go full mission statement, we can go with make ESI great again. If that's not a little bit controversial using that format, but still.
Let's go.
Yeah.
The hot spotlight is on you.
So the thing I'm chasing is the fact that third-party development as a whole is something that not only from CCP side actually is worth pointing out that it's sort of slowly started to die off in the last few years. And a significant chunk of that can, sadly, not to pick on them, but be blamed on CCP due to their shifting priorities and whatnot. If you look at there's like a public GitHub where you can look at people registering issues with the EVE Online's API. And if you check over that place, you'll see that it's sort of unresolved issues are really starting to stack up, and they have been doing so for a year or so. And essentially the core of my platform is to try and steer CCP's attention back to that side of things a little bit. This game relies on third-party tools to a shocking extent in some ways. The amount of people that would lose their mind if Ezekiel disappeared. But
can you imagine?
Right, and it's. I don't think we're realistically going to lose anything like that anytime soon. But as the sort of rot starts to set in, things get a bit more difficult and things start to stagnate. The theme of the last couple of years has been stagnation, and unfortunately ESI and third-party dev is also an area that hasn't been immune to that. So that's my sort of primary platform. As a sort of secondary to that, it's not unlike White Orchid. I'm arguably independent and whatnot, in that I'm actually part of a disgusting Care Bear alliance that exists in HiSec and doesn't get involved in the big dark spooky wars, and actually gets dunked on by Volta at sometimes. But yeah, I don't have a dog in the race kind of thing.
You got to remember Volta are now no block now as well, so don't worry about that. To be expected from them.
All I know is last time I went out flying spaceships having a fight with somebody, Volta turned up and slapped me on the head. But yeah, it's a platform of, I know where I don't have strength. If you go asking me, what do you think about rebalancing this ship because it's not very good in this fleet comp? I don't know. Don't ask me. But if you want to get heavy into some of the technical changes that happen to the game, and even just passing almost like a mechanical sanity check over changes, definitely someone that can help you with that kind of thing. Because my personal background is software development and things like that, especially. Basically, it's my bread and butter in my day job all day, every day, to write and consume things like EVE Online's API, ESI. So yeah, it's a general little bit of everything, but third-party dev is the one and only my sweetheart kind of thing.
I don't know. I'll get back to you on the third-party development, because I'm involved in IT, so I have many questions, which will probably which will help you kind of get your point across in terms of CSM. But Orchid, yourself, mate, this is the spotlight's on you now. What's your main kind of, I hate to use the corporate term, but why are you applying there? What do you feel that you can influence, or what do you want to try and influence?
Well, I think, as I said before, it was mostly around, partly, again, my day job. I'm also a software developer, but I'm also a kind of a I suppose what they call a product owner, which is we take suggestions and features and weigh up the best way of implementing them. So I may not necessarily be the guy that comes up with the fantastic idea that is the feature, but when someone comes to me and says, look, how should we implement this, then I'm that guy, basically. So that's where I kind of see me fitting in the CSM, because that's what I see the CSM as doing. CCP will come to them with a new implementation of something, or even just an idea, and say, hey, look, what do you guys think of this? How will this affect the game? And I think that's where I see myself fitting in, really.
There you go. I suppose, Reicher, with you running, what's your approach and why are you applying?
So my whole platform is basically centered around two things that I believe need attention. One is PvE, especially in nullsec. Parts of it just aren't fun. They're very AFKable. In fact, a lot of people who tell you how to do them, like ratting, essentially, like it's the easiest way to do it is AFK, and that's not fun. What part of my platform is that I want to see an improvement in more types of variety in PvE content. Make it more fun make it fun, something that people really want to do, instead of, something that they have to do. One of the best examples of, PvE in this game that people think are fun and that I generally really like is Abyssal Sites. Those are some of the most engaging PvE content that I think Eve has in this game. What my platform is about is it's about advocating more of that type of PvE within the game. Another big part of my platform is the community. This game, people who play Eve, like, they're not, a good percentage of players aren't playing because they love the mechanics. I know me and a lot of the people that I fly with, we play this game because we love the community. We love interacting with people. And I personally think that CCP, while they have been very good about recently, really helping to promote the community and really support community initiatives, streamers, I believe that they need to continue doing that, and to not just continue, but to do more of that. So yeah, that's really what my platform is about. And to go into why I believe that I think that I'd be a good fit for this is that my job from day to day is a lot like what the CSM does, in that the CSM is meant to provide feedback to the developers about, hey, is this a good change? What do you guys think? Well, I work in game QA, and my whole job is to be an advocate for the player. And so I think that real world experience would really benefit the CSM, and I think would augment their ability to give feedback, I think.
Well, there you go then. So, Spud, obviously you mentioned in terms of third-party tools. Obviously, I apologise for anyone that's not involved in any sort of software development. This may prove to be kind of boring, but like, you often seen, like, a long time ago, I used to play World of Warcraft. I shamefully admit, and WoW actually spent some time, and what they did was they noticed third-party tools, and they began integrating them as part of the platform. What do you believe that is something that you could promote?
You mean how I'm not massively familiar with World of Warcraft. at least beyond trying it out for a couple of days and getting bored, to be honest. But are you talking about how they made? I'm aware that I think they made certain tools like actually part of the game more directly. Is that what you mean?
Yeah, it's basically like the integration. So they noticed some, like they called them add-ons, and they adapted that and then they integrated it as part of the actual game itself. Do you believe that they integrated damage meters and stuff like that to an extent, from what I can remember? That's a good example, but obviously you haven't played that. So do you believe that's something that you could push for?
Do you know, I kind of don't think an integration on that level is actually almost necessary. I also don't think it's in their remit, because we actually already have, there already exist tools that achieve that with the existing things that CCP provide. Integrating more with the client, potentially yes, because one of the things that we lost was the in-game browser. If you remember, that had quite a few little tools you could work with, because it was admittedly very basic, but it had a few little features that let you do certain things directly in the game. But to be honest, CCP have actually done a good job with bringing ESI, the current iteration of how we do things, in line with that. So I think one of the main things, for example, was seeing what system you're in, and also setting your destination and pulling up like show info tabs or market tabs. And they have actually managed to integrate that largely with the new API. So we're actually not missing too much on that front in terms of direct integration. I definitely think there's more to be done, but they've gone down this ESI route, as they call it, and I think that is actually the way to go. It's just ESI is still somewhat lacking in certain ways, so the real push needs to be behind adding in more endpoints for things that people want. Because I say that if you go back and look at that GitHub, there's plenty of very solid ideas that even CCP themselves have actually looked at these comments and replied and said, yeah, that's a good idea. They just haven't gotten around to it yet. And there's also the whole side of it needs maintenance. So some things are just stopped working because of various changes throughout time, and they need to catch up. Need to get them going again.
Why Crest instead of? I'm unfamiliar with various different ESIs, but why do you believe Crest, or why do you believe that they chose Crest above any other option?
Well, Crest is long dead. Crest was like the stopgap they put while they were figuring out what they were doing, because it used to be the XML API.
Tell a lie, the new one, I forget the name of it. What was the one?
The current one is ESI.
ESI. Sorry, I was being in a day. Yeah, the actual ESI itself. Why would they choose that above any other option?
Because it's pretty much an industry standard to do things this way, and they've set it up in a way that it's actually extremely flexible. It's so much cleaner these days, because you remember the times when you had to go and generate a weird API key and submit it to a stranger over the internet in an in-game mail, and hopefully he didn't share it with all his mates. That's why you ended up with places. What was it called? There was like Eve Skunk or something like that, which was a big repository of stolen keys. That's not possible anymore, and it's so much easier. You just log in with your character, click next, off you go. So that's pretty much, I think, why they've gone that way. It's so much better integrated, so much tidier, simpler, and ESI actually, I believe, stands for Eve Swagger Interface. Swagger being how to describe it. Swagger is kind of like a tool set that automatically describes your API, if that means anything to you, which essentially it makes it much easier for the developers to work with, as in the third parties, the outside developers. It gives us a magical web page where we just look on there and see. It tells us everything the API can do and how to do it.
It's in essence, what he's saying is it's effectively like someone written code and actually commented on it.
Yeah, but it's a magical self-commenting code in a way. The huge advantage of it is, so the one thing that ESI has that none of the previous iterations have had is, well, I think Crest did to some extent, but the ability to do things instead of just read things. Because previously, yeah, you could pull your emails, you could pull your contacts, you could pull this, pull that, pull this, pull that. But ESI is the first time you've been able to do things like save your bookmarks, save your routes, send a mail, amongst other things. And well, people are obviously excited to see what more it can do.
Yeah.
That's to be seen.
Yeah. I find it weird that they. I mean, yeah, we use Swagger, in my workplace as well. It's weird they called it ESI because Swagger is basically just API endpoint auto documentation. Like that's pretty much what it is. It's to save you the effort of writing up API docs. It's weird they actually called it ESI. It's pretty much
cool
just a standard RESTful API, isn't it? Right?
Yeah, it is a bog standard JSON API that is just behind this auto documenting doodad, which makes it seem cool. I don't know. They've always had wacky names. Like Crest, which was, I can't remember what the C standard for, but it's a REST API, but they wanted to make it sound cool. And CCP like doing that. It's just their thing.
I feel like just programmers and developers in general just like will name things like really cool names just because.
Yeah.
You could name something like exactly what it does, or you could name it something better and actually like cool so that people remember it. Like Crest is way more like, how do I say this? When you're, never mind. I'm just not even gonna say anything.
Crest is better than saying the EVE Online API. It's a nice, sharp, snappy, memorable way of doing it.
Yeah.
So what I wanted to do, I'm kind of making this up as we go along because that's the best way, really, in my opinion. But I've got obviously your campaign statements here, Orchid. Like a curious question for you. Like one of them was a very broad answer. It mentioned here more opportunities for smaller groups. What?
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on that? Or how could you elaborate on that?
Yeah, I think in general the game is both marketed and skewed towards larger entities. And this recent war, you've got a lot of people on each side, but not just at like a really top level, at a smaller level, a lower level as well. Things like there are certain ships like Supers, Titans, those kind of things that you can't really use in smaller groups effectively because the big guys will dunk on you. Things like Rorke Wolves, for example. And even just in general, taking or carving an area of space for yourself. Now, I'm not in the business of doing that, but I can just see it being hard.
I would be hard to accept that, Orchid. I've been to Fade recently. There is a lot of space with Volta written on it.
Yeah, okay, right. So I joined Volta about 2 months ago. But I'm not talking about like Volta-sized organizations. I'm talking about the smaller organizations, the smaller groups that some people don't like joining Mumble and seeing 200 people in there. Some people like playing with a group of 10, 15, 20 friends, that kind of thing. At the minute, that kind of gameplay, you're basically okay, high sec, maybe some gate camping in low sec or wormholes. Like you can't really carve an area of null for yourself because there are bigger people, yes, like Volta, but much bigger people like Frat, Horde, Goons, or up until recently anyway.
I have to say, the last 2 times I tried to take space in nullsec, it was Volta that stopped me doing it.
I think Spod has developed a bit of a problem with Volta recently. well, obviously we'll deal with that one later.
I guess. So, White, I guess my question to you would be: do you think that smaller groups, I guess, should be able to stay competitive with the bigger groups, or do you think that maybe there should be mechanics that make it to where it's easier for a smaller group to hold space. Because in my mind, I think that, okay, if they make it easier for smaller groups to hold space, then that's just also going to make it way easier for bigger groups to hold larger swaths of space.
Yeah, I see where you're coming from. I think that no, so I don't think you should give equal opportunities in terms of expansion to everybody from a game mechanic perspective, but from an opportunity perspective, you should. So yes, I'm not saying a 30-man organization would be able to take an entire region, because I don't think that's feasible, because you give up something for wanting that smaller group. But yes, I think from a mechanics perspective, that it would be nice to see things introduced where, and I'm not just talking about SOV here, so I want to make that clear, that just in general, mechanics that are introduced that allow people to, in smaller groups, maybe take systems for themselves, or have better PvE opportunities, or use a Rorqual or something like that. I know it's quite broad, and I think the reason it's quite broad is because the game is so broad. But I think that in most of those areas, that smaller groups don't really have much of a chance right now.
Yeah, I think I kind of see what you're saying. So, like, your thing is like, maybe a small organization is able to take maybe like a constellation and have maybe a Fortizar at max.
Yeah, I
But
mean,
still,
if we're talking about just the SOV perspective, then perhaps, yeah.
because I do know, so like a lot of smaller groups, like let's say Snuff for instance, they're like 30 guys, but they have a ton of vaults. Do you think that maybe something a group like Snuff with a ton of vaults and really knows how to play the game, because they're able to take on RC just fine, but again they need all these alts. Do you think that maybe those smaller groups could leverage alts in order to do that, and that would be the fix for that? Or do you think that they should only using one account, but if they have enough skill, that they should be able to leverage that? I guess if any of that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, look, multi-boxing has been here a long time. It's not going away. Recently but both on Waffles and in Volta fleets, I'm used to multi-boxing 3, maybe even 4 characters at once. Because yes, maybe looking at Volta, they're not small, but they're not huge either. And smaller groups in that, like Snuff, they do have to leverage multi-boxing to stay competitive. I don't know how I feel about that, because obviously I do it. It would be nice that you didn't have to do it. If your choice is, hey, sub like 4 or 5 accounts to remain competitive in a smaller group of people, or just go join a big block where you press F1, it doesn't feel like a fair choice to me.
Yeah, and I totally get that. And in terms of the PVE money making opportunities, when they introduced abyssals, you don't you can easily multi-box abyssals and make, and if you're good enough, make a bill an hour. When it comes to Rorks, in smaller groups fielding Rorks, um, that's a massive asset, and that's more of like a, hey, you need an empire to do those. Um, so I don't know if I really can get behind the whole idea of these small 10-man alliances being able to protect their Rorks, because at the end of the day, they're a small 10-man alliance. Anything they do can easily just get destroyed. No matter what, even if they are using, these big 10-man, these Rorks. At the end of the day, it's not going to matter, essentially.
Yeah, I think in the current way they're used, you're right. But maybe is there a way? There's a couple of things that a couple of suggestions out there with regards to if we're talking Rorqual specifically, and one of them was maybe give them something extra. Maybe allow them to compress, for example, or something like that. Now, I'm not an expert. I'm pretty sure they don't do that already, but just allow people to kind of use them for that. And also, with regards to the reason that you have to have a group behind you is because fielding them and sitting them out in space vulnerable for quite a long time, allows people to find you quite easily and pretty much take away your ability to do that in the first place, right? So there's another suggestion that I'd heard around not necessarily having the Rork on field for a huge amount of time, but going back to my post, when it comes to kind of more active gameplay, having other forms of gameplay in there that allow you to take an active part in maybe mining, for example, and you have to maybe complete some kind of mini game or something on the ore, or something along that lines, so that when your Rork comes in to actually mine it, it's not there for quite as long.
Yeah.
Do you think that maybe instead of like Rorquals or anything, do you think maybe there'd be an option for like instead of Rork boosting and actually like mining with Rorks, do you think that other smaller entities could be competitive and still make a ton of money by, I guess, making ISK other ways that maybe require a little bit more skill?
Do you mean things like abyssals, for example?
Yeah, stuff like that.
Yeah,
Can I just touch on, there seems to be a bit of disparity of what is a small, like quote unquote, small guy. Because you've not only got the sort of numeric smallness, you also have to take into account development, for example. Like, I'll use my own alliance as an example. We are a 500 character alliance. Yet, that actually dwarfs, in this example, Volta. But in a fight, not in a million years would we have a chance of truly going toe to toe. So that it's almost a different grade of small guy, the kind of small guy that doesn't even dream of a Rorqual because it's not viable, not because of a numbers issue, but because of they're typically newer or more, to use the classic swear word, carebeary kind of folk. It just feels a bit odd to. It feels a bit odd to call Snuff small. The guys that project across pretty much all of low-sec and are the big bad if you dare do anything in low-sec. It feels very odd to call them in particular small.
I think the area of the space they occupy is fairly uncontested, though, right? As in, there are no other huge entities around them, especially with the war at the moment, that kind of want to oppose them. And I think what I mean by small is not necessarily characters, but people. There are a lot less people, real people, sitting behind PCs in organizations like Snuff than there are in places like Horde.
Very true, yeah. It's almost like we need this like a medium class to make things a bit clearer. It's a weird world.
And personally, I think low-sec can fill that role. And I'm one of the things we've actually seen now is that like the null blocks, like, yeah, they control a lot of space, but they can't be everywhere at once. And I think that small groups or small to medium-sized groups do have a place in nullsec, and it's just I don't really know how they could be factored in, because again, if you change the mechanics in any way to benefit the small guy, like it's going to benefit the bigger alliances and the bigger blocks.
Yeah, true. Yeah, and that's why it's a difficult question, right?
Impossible challenge.
Yeah, and it is a difficult question because it's one of those things where it's like almost no matter what you do, you're going to benefit the big guys.
Yeah, it may just simply be where we're at in the game, right? Yeah, I don't have to like it, but it just may be where we're at.
A significant chunk of it is, of course, it's going to be the maturity of the game. It is a huge problem because you've got not just people, but organizations of hundreds or thousands that have had 18 years now to truly min-max the game, both on the actual individual mechanics, but the societal level, just I hate to keep poking the Volta thing, but as an example, if you're smaller than a group in terms of military power, a group like Volta, there are a number of regions where you can't operate, such as Cloud Ring and Pureblind, apart from a few exceptions, without encountering, and it's not a large guy, but it's more like a chain effect of multiple smaller guys. For example, if you hit Triumvirate in Cloud Ring, you'll get Volta on the other end, and then suddenly you've gone from fighting a single adversary to two, and there's nothing wrong with that. That's normal. That's a part of the game. That's called having friends and having relationships, but it's also an extension of the same problem of groups working together and being too big and functionally repressing the smaller big groups without leaving the only option for the smaller groups to either become best buds with these established rings or sign up with one of the big blocks, which isn't necessarily desirable.
I have to say, for someone who runs a high-sec 5-man corp, you seem to know a lot about politics in EVE.
Because it's an alt character. You should know that, buddy.
I think it just seems to me to know a lot about Volta. That's about it. Really.
Yeah.
I am the executor of the entire alliance.
Do you ever have occasions where you like end up talking to yourself, or like to one of your alts if you're multi-boxing at the time?
Oh no, I've tactically named all of my alts, so I don't usually run into them too much.
I always did wonder, because obviously a few people had the problem with any players that had the alts in the 20s and 30s or above. I always did wonder if you end up going a bit delusional, you end up just not talking to anybody else apart from just your own alts. That would be quite an odd experience. But anyway,
the best side of that is actually when you have so many alts and you start a conversation with somebody on one, and then you swap to another one, and you swap to another one, and you swap to another one, and they can't track whether they're talking to the same guy or not.
It's a bit odd, yes. So, Spud, I have a question for you. The big subject, like the funny thing, I thought the other day there, being involved in this war, as boring as it is, an odd thought was that obviously the game went through a phase where the Rorqual was a big problem because that just generated an obscene amount of ISK. But now it is now at the other end of the scale where, like, at one point, I think it went a few weeks. I literally cannot remember the last time I actually seen a Rorqual being used for mining. Like at the moment, I've seen salvage, loot, tackle, I don't know, a full range of choices apart from actual mining. So, like, obviously, if you got the CSM job, what would your thought process be and what you would use the Rorqual for?
It's an interesting one because when it comes to the Rorqual, it seems like CCP are actually already decided on what they're going to do with it. That's just me speculating from conversations I've overheard, shall we say. But if you look at what some of the CSM guys, the existing CSM guys, are saying, it seems like Rorquals actually might be getting a buff. So I dare say it's actually kind of difficult to speculate on what will happen to Rorquals in particular, because I would also expect the not the scarcity thing, but the industry changes as a whole is continuing, and I think it might be safe to expect something to change very soon that will also affect Rorquals in their potential usage. I'm treading a dangerous line because I know things I shouldn't know.
Oh no, I see. No, you shouldn't have just mentioned that. That's why you need to elaborate on that. You need to tell me more.
I'm not going to, I'm afraid.
Yeah. Orchid, your thoughts on that? What would I pose the same question to you, mate?
To me, sorry, I keep getting cut off, so I have no idea what I keep having to rejoin. So,
All right, yeah, all right. Well, what I was asking Spod was that for a long time the Rocco was a problem for people because it was just a money printing or a ISK making machine, and now it's kind of on the other end of the scale. It's still being used. It's been mentioned in chat. It's been used, but on a significantly less amount of time. So, say for example, it was kind of refocused its purpose. What would your thoughts be, and what you would do with it?
I mean, it would 100% be an industrial command ship, like, which is what someone said in chat. I mean, fact is that like I multi-boxed Rorks, and I made like way too much money for almost no effort. Like, I'd be sitting watching Netflix while I passively made $1 billion a day, like without even looking. I mean, the fact that they're finally like really starting to nerf and come down on Rorks and stuff, like that needed to happen. I mean, the whole reason we're in this situation where everyone has Titans and everyone has Supers is because of the Rork. And so if they were to refocus the Rork to be more of the industrial like hub of a fleet and be where you can compress, get all those boosts, like I think that really is where the Rork needs to be, instead of this monster of a miner that can pay itself off in a couple days.
Can I make a point on the Rorquals mining? Well, if that's all right. I don't want to interject when it's someone else's turn.
Can I while you're here, Spud, you're welcome to can I say something? Just throwing that out there.
So on the I would actually largely agree that we pretty much should nuke its mining ability, but when you just look at it and you look at CCP's traditional behavior and the behavior of the community when things like this change, I can almost guarantee it's not going to happen, simply for the fact that they've got to get rid of is it excavator drones? Is that what they're called? They would have to essentially make those function worthless, right?
Don't try that, Spud. You know exactly what they are.
I actually have never used a Rork. I'm not going to lie, I've never used one. But yeah, they'd have to make them useless, and they're actually quite a high value item, and they're traded a lot. And I don't see them ripping out an item of that value without causing a real doo-doo storm. So I think they're going to have to find another way around it. What the other way around is, I don't know, but I think that's not going to be the answer. I mean, it's the idealistic answer, but I don't think it's the answer that CCP is going to go with.
And I tend to agree, but it's like, but the fact remains is that the reason why EVE is in its current situation, the reason why we have scarcity is, well, part of it is because we were able to make just incredible amounts of ISK and mine just incredible amounts of ore using Rorks. So yes, I don't foresee CCP actually like completely taking away the Rorks' ability to mine. I think it's still going to be able to mine, but the fact is that it needs to be refocused rather than just being just this god of a mining ship. Like back in the day when Rorks weren't a thing, like you had people multi-boxing mining fleets, with a bunch of covetors, and a bunch of covetors, like you could easily warp them off, and it was much easier to get away with them, but they made significantly less money, and it was way more of an active gameplay. Like sitting and watching your Rork just make billions of ISK every day, instead it was, no, you have to watch like 30 different Hulks and still make that same amount of money. But at the same time, like if you're plexing those accounts, like a very good portion of that money you made would then go to actually paying off those accounts.
Right. You got much to talk to us about this, Orchid. I know this is not your area. It's mine now. Oh, were you? What was your?
Yeah, my push to talk stopped working earlier for some reason when I was trying to respond. Yeah, it's not my area of expertise. I'm not going to claim I know Rorquals rules well at all.
I know,
you know.
I know, like, I only know how to make them explode. I've never flown one at all.
No, I mean, like, yeah, we catch them every now and again, and it's good to shoot them. So, that's great. I just hear a lot that people say they are quite powerful. I have seen the snuff, in kind of Placid area, I think it is. I've seen the kind of huge, 10, 15 Rorqual snuff blobs that just suck all the ore up incredibly quickly and then vanish again. So yeah, I do agree that maybe their boosting capability could be upped a bit to give people still a reason to use them. I think probably you're right. They're not just going to completely nuke the mining ability, because I think these ships are expensive and a lot of players would be probably not particularly pleased now they have these really expensive ships and all they can do is boost. So I don't know how that's going to go, to be honest.
So one thing I'd like to bring up is that, people before these changes, people still used Rorks, and they were used as off-grid boosters. So, like, even if they were to, let's say, nuke the mine and made them, not be able to mine, like, people would still buy Rorks and use them for boosters.
I think the concern is more about the immediate fallout. I mean, remember last time at CCP did anything extreme, the guys spent God knows how many hours screaming on Reddit and shooting monuments, and CCP don't like that. I don't think they'll want that to happen again.
There's always, never going to please everyone, but Spud, you know that. Not everyone. Everyone's very upset about something. You know what I mean? Everyone's very passionate about their thoughts on this. I was interested, Orchid. Obviously the whole Rocco thing wasn't your area, so I kind of wanted to give you an opportunity there. I was having a look at some of your pointers, like you mentioned more active gameplay. A big example being missions. Now, like the whole missioning stuff is I sometimes do mainly for the loyalty points. But how would you change it, or what would you push for to make it more engaging?
So I think I'd probably say in my post somewhere that at the minute, quite a lot, and I'm going to take Abyssals maybe out of this equation because they are newer and there's slightly different mechanics in there, which I think are good. But I think that CCP's solution typically to PvE, which a lot of people have to do to make ISK in this game, is just give them more damage. Like something does more damage to you and then it's harder, right? And I was a WoW player. I started way back in alpha, I think. And I think it's kind of like just something that has to make you think while you're doing things. And things like in a mission, or maybe in sites in nullsec, for example, just add something to it to make it not an AFK grind almost. You sit in Ishtar on a site, you orbit, and you kind of press F every now and again. It adds something interesting, like like the clouds, for example, like areas that you have to avoid, that you have to actually pilot your ship to get around, or something along those lines. As I said, I'm not a massive ideas guy, but I think something needs to be done to have kind of more active gameplay. And maybe if you up the reward for those more active gameplays, that might entice people to doing it. Otherwise, they're just going to sit with their AFK ratting ships, maybe.
Real quick, this is, was I completely cut off in the beginning when I was supposed to explain my platform?
No, I think we got most of it. I can't remember.
Okay. Remember, I disconnected at one point.
Got to remember, Reicher, it's every time we do this show, it's always technical issues. So, true to form.
We were doing pretty good for a while there, but then it just had to come back?
Of course.
So one thing I guess I'd like to ask everyone, both of you guys, Orchid and Spod, is I guess what made you decide to run?
I just think from playing this game since 2008 and getting a decent amount of knowledge on it, I just want to help. I just want to help the game, really. I just want to help people get more fun out of the game. I think that's kind of where it comes from, because I enjoy the game. I enjoy a lot of the people. I met a lot of good people through the game, and I think that it is very unique. There's not another MMO like this. It plays very differently. It is much more sandboxy, and so I think that it really just comes from a place of wanting to help, really.
I'm actually curious to hear what your answer to that, Reicher.
I mean, my answer is basically the same thing. I've been playing the game since 2012. Been in multiple wars, and it feels like especially the nullsec representation, like you have a lot of big alliance leaders and all that stuff, but you really don't have like just the typical line member. The guy who logs in every day and is actually engaging with these mechanics. Granted, that changed when Brisk got elected, but there's still, well, I can't say for certain, but considering that Brisk is like one of the most well-known line members in the game, it just still feels like the vast majority of nullsec representation is the big alliance leaders, the big industry guys, but not really the guy who, again, logs in every day and engages with all of this content every day. That and just loving this game is really why I wanted to run.
I like it.
Dr. Spod, what about you?
So for me it's a little bit different. Well, I mean, I can make the same claims of I've played for a while, probably around since 2009, but on and off like most people do. But my main point is for the last couple of years, I've really struggled to find who do I actually want to vote for. Because nobody ever seems to, at least since our Lord and Savior Steve Renoukon stopped running for CSM, which I understand why. He's done it for what feels like a million years, and he's had enough. Since he stopped the third-party development kind of thing, and that his whole repertoire has been just neglected. You can look through the candidates, and one or two will maybe make a passing reference to it, but none of them seem even vaguely passionate about it, or it's something that they ever put as a campaign. I can't say campaign promise because that's not how the CSM works, but you know what I mean. Just got frustrated with it and thought, well, I can do it, I guess. I know my way around DSI. I'm not awful at talking to people. And I have roughly the right professional background, so screw it. I'll do the job. And I dare say, sort of a pat on my own back is I've set myself up so that my intention is, even if I don't win, I'll have garnered enough votes that next time, or even this time, those that did win look and see that is a voting block. That is a group of people that care about that. And it needs to be on some of you guys' ballots. So yeah, I win if I lose. I lose if I win. No, wait, I win if I win.
No, I was wondering that for a second.
So if I'm tracking right, you want to bring more attention to this sort of, I don't want to say underappreciated, but this part of Eve that isn't really get as much attention as you think it should.
Yeah. So I've got things, I've got plans, I've got ideas of how to push it should I magically become CSM. But I still feel that my job will be kind of somewhat done. Not that I'm never going to try again, but my point is that I think I will still have achieved at least some of what I'm trying to do, even if I wasn't victorious.
That's commendable.
Somebody described it as like when you vote for a third-party candidate in your local election. You know that red team and blue team is the only ones that are realistically the option to choose. But when you vote for the purple team, you know that the politicians that you voted in that were victorious anyway, they still have to look at the field and look at the votes that were on the table. And ultimately, yeah, it's pandering, but they do have to pander to those blocks. Those are potential votes that they could have had to help them beat the other team next time.
Yeah, no, that makes total sense. That's kind of falls in line with what I'm trying to promote, and I think with what White Orchid's trying to promote as like, hey guys, like there's this whole big part of Eve that being PVE, which honestly, some parts of it feel kind of stale and boring, and we don't want them to be stale and boring. White Orchid brought up the whole example of you undock in your Ishtar, you go and you shoot and you AFK in a site for however long until it's done, and then you warp to the next site. Like, that whole content could be so much better and so much more fun, but everyone kind of ignores it, and it's just thought of as, okay, it's just grindy, that's just content we do to make money. And I don't think it should be content that we do to make money. I think we should do it for fun and have it be engaging, and then just have money sort of be an alternate thing that happens as a result. I guess, if that makes any sense.
Yeah,
Basically,
and that's why it's so important that people do run, even if you don't expect to get more than 10 votes, right? It's important that you run, because if you have a platform that you think is valid, then you bring attention to it. Like, if you get 2,000 votes, 3,000 votes, 4,000 votes, those are all votes that I know technically this is not quite how the voting system works, but this point still stands. They're all votes that big block guy number 7 could have had, and big block guy number 7 really likes having votes, so he's going to steal your idea functionally, and we need more of that. More people need to run.
Yeah, I think that's definitely true. I think the thing that I try and get across to people is, if they have time to just watch a show like this or any of the interviews, to just have a think about who they're voting for and what they're voting for, rather than just they're in a big null alliance, they get a ballot through in a court mail and they just go click 1, 2, 3, that's who I'm voting for, just because it happens to be their their leader or someone important in their alliance. It doesn't necessarily mean that person is the best person to be on CSM either. Just I think it's important to have both independent and also to have people think about who they're voting for too.
A good way to look at it is that big alliance leaders, they're constantly busy because they have a big alliance to lead. And one thing that again, I have no idea if this is true or not. This is just another way of thinking about it. But someone who might not be a big alliance leader, they realistically, when you think about it, they would have more of their game time to spend doing CSM stuff. Whereas a big alliance leader, they need to balance it between leading an alliance, actually having fun, and doing CSM stuff. And again,
that's a very good point. That's a good point, and it's something that I worried about as well, because being, as I say, the executor of my own alliance, I'm already stretched for time. That's just a truth. There's no point in lying about that. So yeah, balancing that with CSM stuff is going to be fun. Quite possible.
Orchid, I have a question for you, and this is obviously out with your CSM, but obviously I've been joking about with Volta now being a big null block alliance now instead of Inthera, but with the SOV taking mechanics, recently joining Horde, I experienced the boredom in SOV taking. Is there any thoughts towards how you would potentially change that in an ideal world? Because I was nearly in tears on one fleet as a result of the whole SOV taking thing.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure if I have any suggestions on exactly, a great idea of how to change that, but I do agree. Before Waffles were in Horde last year with you guys, and even now in Volta. Right now, thankfully, we don't do a huge amount of SOV stuff, but I find it incredibly boring personally. I know there's a lot of people dedicated, in Horde and Brave and Test that have managed to sweep through Delve and do it, but I haven't met someone who said they truly enjoy it yet. I just don't know how you would change it because it's already been through one iteration. It was quite a while ago. But yeah, it does. I think the aim was to get people to move around a bit, obviously with the nodes that spawn. And yeah, that worked, but it still can be a little bit boring.
But anyone, you guys, any further thoughts on that? Because as I said, the is time consuming, and especially if any obviously Riker, you know yourself being part of Busa, the SOV taking the if the whenever we're obviously taking space in Delve, a lot of the time it was uncontested. So you're literally just sitting, you weren't even able to shoot at anything. So do you guys have any thoughts on what could be changed there to make it less AFK, I suppose?
I will say, I will say that while yes, it is pretty boring just running around and, making sure people don't get shot, because even though SOV is, quote unquote, uncontested in certain ways, there were still plenty of times where goons would run around with small fleets and, try to kill our Antosisers. That compared to sitting somewhere and shooting a station, whether it be in tie-dye or uncontested, I would much rather be moving around and actually doing stuff than sitting in one spot, whether it be in tie-dye or not, and just shooting stuff. Like the massive big battles that would take place in the old SOV system, those were fun, but those were also tie-dye fests. Granted, I still like those battles, but we now have, set piece battles in areas in which, events in which we do have those things, and those are citadels. So while I don't think that the current SOV system is perfect, it's better than what we had originally.
Yeah, that SOV wasn't like I don't know anything about it, what it was before. Spud, I'm guessing that question doesn't really apply to you at all then, no?
I've been closest once or twice, and I was like, weird laser goes, bzz, I don't know what is happening.
Yeah.
It's not an issue that I can sort of weigh in too heavily on. It's more one of those things where I would try and seek out the people that actually have a clue on how that works. I would comment though, is that not kind of part of a problem? It seems like unless you're part of a group that knows how to do it, and I know this might sound a bit kind of whiny, but it's something that's not very well documented. Like you kind of just have to know someone that knows, and they'll explain it to you, and that's fine. But for people that have never done it before and aren't in a group that is experienced with it in any way, it is quite an enigma of how it works. Like even now, I've tried to read up on it, and it's still a bit fuzzy on how exactly it goes down.
No, everyone talks about spooling and a thing attached to a raven or whatever, some sort of ship, and that you have to laser it. I still a mystery to me, but
there's actually a video that CCP did put out, and it explains how the whole thing works. So whether or not it's still up, I actually am pretty sure it's still up. But yes, there is a video that CCP put out that does explain how the new soft system works.
Then I need to find that one.
Yes, so they are. So this was a question I was wanting to ask all you guys. I spoke to Omeka last year, and he mentioned to me once that the CSM, the guys, the CCP guys, posed a question to all of them, and he says, if we had, I'm speaking as a CCP here, obviously, if we had a blank check, what would be what would be something that would be an ideal thing to be introduced to CCP? So I'll give you all a kind of turn on that answer. Spud, and obviously I appreciate the whole crabbing thing will come into your head again.
So, as in like a dream feature / change, no limits, just this. You can do this thing because magic. Yeah,
apparently that was. Micah told me that once. It was CCP says, right, okay, if we had a blank check, obviously they talk. He's helping the developer. CCP would have limited resources in terms of what they can do. And obviously money would be involved, but if they had a blank check, what would be the dream feature, as you call it?
Can I have two?
Nope.
Oh, shit.
I mean, blank check, like, technically you could do whatever you wanted, so...
Exactly.
It's a hard one. I don't know which one to choose. I think from a selfish standpoint, just because I think it would be interesting, and as much as people wouldn't like it, I think it would be one of those things that I can give away what it is by saying it was a huge missed opportunity, is walking in stations.
Oh, we all miss walking in stations.
Yeah, but when I say that, I mean not a friggin' room where you can walk around the sofa. I mean what it was supposed to be. The whole world of walking around and chatting with people and doing stuff. Yeah, somebody just posted in chat, but the opposite, my alternative, which was rewrite the entire game.
Yes, sorry. We'll get to that. We'll get to that part in a minute for sure. Reicher, the reason I asked that question is apparently I've been told that's how Proving Grounds came about. Was that question was posed to everyone, and that was the suggested idea, and that's how Proving Grounds came about. Was that they were given the blank check. That's just a little.
Are the answers anywhere? Like, did somebody record the answers? Because I'd be curious to see who said what.
No, I doubt it. Well, I suppose the CCP not release notes on like conversations, or minutes is the correct word is. Might be worth looking up, I suppose. But Reicher, the same question goes to you, I suppose.
I would say invest it in a community team. Like, yeah, they've already got a community team, but like, spend it and invest in the community. This game is the lifeblood of this game is the community, and if CCP, like, the more CCP can do to support the community, the better. So yeah, that would be my answer.
Obviously, Orchid, the same question would be posed to you.
Yeah, so actually, what Troy said in chat, it kind of, I can't remember who, I was on another thing recently, and someone asked a similar question, what would you do if you had free reign over the entire dev team? And it is something similar to that, actually. Being a dev at heart, that I would really like to get into the nitty-gritty and, try and eke out all those performance issues with people in one system. There's probably a lot of legacy code sitting around in there, and just giving it a bit of a spruce up kind of in the back end. It's not going to be something visual. It's not going to be some like, specific feature. It's just in general, the whole game would improve,
Yeah.
session timers, things like that. Just get rid of them, for example. They say they can't because there's issues in the back end with that.
Yeah, they often said that because of the originally designed postcode that it's integrated into a lot of things.
Yeah.
And they're unable to that. Like, I don't know. You guys know much better than I do in terms of development. Like how, like, could you give us a bit more insight as to like why that is so difficult?
I mean, it's very difficult to. The only way that you could really do it, and I know they use a lot of Python. I'm personally familiar with C#, but you can kind of replace little bits at a time and improve small parts, but sometimes there'll be something else that's affected by that change, and then you have to follow this huge chain back of all the things you're going to break by doing it. And sometimes it is just easier to start entire areas from scratch.
Yeah, just rebuild it.
Yeah.
Because I was going to say the biggest thing too is it's like, okay, so because one of the things in chat was, completely rewrite the game. Okay, well, if they're going to completely rewrite the game, like, how long is that going to take? Like, if CCP says, okay, we're going to rewrite this game from the ground up, that might be however many years that essentially we're not getting content. Like, because they're spending all of their time basically rewriting the game.
Oh, yeah. I think that's why it was an answer to you have a free reign over the dev team, and it's a magic, it's a magic, it can be done instantly, the snap of a finger kind of thing. I don't think that would ever happen. I think they'll probably continue down their path of, improving sections at a time. Chat is still completely broken. Like, it's just every week there's problems with chat. They moved it over to AWS, and it still breaks now. But as long as they don't do that with the other improvements, then I'm fine with it.
To be fair to CCP, they have been working on this a lot. And as far as I'm aware, quite a significant chunk of the server code, at the very least, has moved over. I think it's to C++, I can't remember exactly, but it's gone. A lot of the Python, where they can, is and has been replaced. This is something they're trying to improve. I believe a lot of the Python is mostly, that remains is mostly on the client itself. Which is where the sort of tie-dye kind of bottlenecks aren't actually a problem.
Because, like, following off that ties in, like, I was curious, whenever the whole M2 fight happened and just the arse collapsed out of everything, and all the Titans were lost with, and all that, you know, it's been, the stories people went over the stories so many times, it kind of inspired me to look into a lot of the technical details, and I didn't realise, because of the age of the code, the like performance optimization as well, that like the code is not designed, it can only capitalize on one core. So like anyone in chat has a quad core fucking whatever processor, it's all pointless because
that's largely not necessarily a problem on the client. While the game client is largely single-threaded, it's not actually entirely. The reason the single thread kind of thought process, the reason that becomes a problem is on the server, because, and it's partly a game design problem and partly a technical problem. Because this is where like the Python kind of side of things doesn't necessarily entirely come into it, but it's more the precursor to the issue. That they wrote it in a particular version of Python that heavily encouraged the things to essentially work in a single-threaded mindset. So things come in order and they have to get processed in order. And because of a game like this and the way that it works, you have to do that in some ways, because if you're processing things out of order, you'll get things like you get shot by a ship that's already dead, for example. You have to be really careful about getting this ordering right, and it is a solvable problem. That much is true, but it's ish. But it's a very, very difficult problem to solve. Like it requires some real super mega big brain to really get that working properly. And that's always going to be a problem.
And the thing too is you really got to measure, like, okay, if CCP were to do stuff like that, like how much benefit would it give? Because, like, let's be real, like if CCP came out tomorrow and said, hey, we did these awesome new server configurations, it's going to be great, battles essentially won't have tie-dye, both entities are going to be like, okay, cool, let's push an additional 3,000-4,000 people into a system. Like that is literally word for word what happened during this war. Like we went, we had a system where we had 7,000 people fighting at once, and we broke a world record. Then in the same war, we said, okay, that worked, and the server, performed pretty well. Okay, let's now try to double the world record. Like it's not really a problem of, okay, CCP. You really can't blame CCP for all the stuff they're trying to do and say, oh, well, M2 happened because, the CCP server, completely died. Well, like, no, it happened because the community, like we as a community decided to put, over 10,000 people in the same system. Like other games just straight up could not handle that. Like you look at the server hardware, and it's probably stuff that we haven't even heard of. Like we are at the tip of what technology can realistically do right now. And so again, it's why whenever I hear the argument of, oh, just make it multi-threaded, it's like, okay, well, they spend all this time and they make the game multi-threaded, then us as a community is like, okay, well, let's go and try to double the world record again. And then the server breaks, and then where are we? Like we're still in the same situation. So it kind of feels like it wouldn't be worth it to go through all that trouble just to be in the same situation, except instead of it happening with, over 10,000 players, we're now at 15,000 players,
Actually, just a thought on that it's almost like, I kind of got a question based on that that I think is kind of interesting. So in this magical world where they've rewritten the game and it's got, let's just say, infinity performance, you cannot trigger tie-dye, you can't crash the game, doesn't matter how many people you put in. Is that a good thing? Because a lot of things need tie-dye. If you start a mega fight of you start 1,000 guys versus 1,000 guys, the only reason that can escalate is because tie-dye gives them time to get there.
I think yes and no, right? I think the experiences I've had with tie-dye, and I personally really dislike tie-dye fights because I'm sat there in a system for 4+ hours doing something that could have been achieved in 30 minutes, and then I can get up and go and get on with my life and actually having enjoyed that game rather than sat there for 4 hours, 8 hours, 12 hours, however long some of these ridiculous battles go on for, where you've got Titans and Supers jumping in. And is that really enjoyable for people? Maybe there is some
the media likes
kind
it.
of yeah, that's true. Maybe there is some masochists out there that enjoy sitting, waiting for their guns to cycle for 12 hours. I don't really like that idea. I don't think everybody else likes that.
So what you're suggesting is that you believe tie-dye was a mistake to create in the first place, then? Is that
well, I think it was their solution, their only solution to being able to handle that many players. If tie-dye wasn't there, I think it'd probably just fall apart completely, right?
Yeah. Like that's what kind of frustrates me about it. You guys, like, I'm working IT, but I'm all hardware, so I'm fucking blind to software. But like, what frustrates me is you hear a lot of players. like they don't understand that like cramming these amount of players into such small place with the kind of hardware we have available to us like today shouldn't really be possible. So tie-dye as a solution, like in being able to play it for such an extended period of time. Admittedly, obviously, as you said, White Orchid, like playing for 4 hours just to see your gunfire. Like tie-dye, like having these amount of players play at the same time shouldn't really be possible in the first place. So does that make sense? Am I making sense or just babbling?
I mean, it's effectively, when you've got the reason tie-dye exists is effectively the combination of software and hardware cannot cope with that amount of instructions at a given time. So what it does is it goes, well, I've now got 10 times as many instructions coming in, and I have to slow my game down by 10 times to be able to process them all properly. And fair enough, it doesn't always manage to do that, but it's probably the only solution that they had to actually counteract the huge amount of people playing. I don't think what what Reicher said is necessarily true. I think yes, everyone is going to, say that the limits were lifted on, on tie-dye and on the amount of players in a system. Yes, there's probably going to be a certain degree of more people coming into these battles, but it's going to stop somewhere because there's only a certain amount of concurrent players in the game, right? It's not going to go on forever.
But
that's 100% true. Like, yeah, there's only a certain like concurrent number of players, but like, that concurrent number of players is still very high. And most of the time, whenever I'm logged in, I'm not logged in with all my accounts. I'm logged in with maybe 1 or 2 accounts. But like, if there's a max form tie-dye, like, hey, we need everyone, at most I can double, or I can log on maybe 5 accounts, right? And I'm just one guy. If you've got multiple people in an alliance of thousands of people in a coalition of hundreds of thousands of people, those numbers can easily get ridiculous. Because I think when the war first started, Pappy was at like a total of 150,000 characters. Now, granted, the vast majority of those characters were probably alts, but even just like a fraction of that is still huge and would still crash the server just on its own. Like currently, whenever Pappy does a big undock, the server immediately goes into tie-dye. And honestly, I think tie-dye is a good thing. Granted, yes, it can limit fights. It does make things boring. But currently, the alternative would be that the game just stops working.
Yeah, I think that's probably right.
Spud, with your involvement in industry, kind of linking to that as well, with your involvement in industry and obviously the massive changes in like I've seen all the estimated prices and it's madness. Do you believe, obviously linking to what we were saying about tie-dye, do you believe that will limit the amount of ships being sent out because obviously the cost has spiked so significantly?
Not the amount, but the size, yeah. And I think that was entirely intentional. I think that's what they meant to do.
Yeah.
We can argue all day whether that was the right thing to do, but that's absolutely what they meant to do. They wanted to push people back down into smaller ships. They didn't. While they're great for media and they look amazing in the screenshots, like Orchid said, no one actually likes to sit there in a tie-dye Titan waiting 45 minutes just to see a laser go bing. Nobody likes that. It's dull. I don't even like watching it. Like I like the aftermath, but come on.
Right.
And pushing people into these smaller ships keeps things a bit more lively, I think.
Ron does a good thing. Like sometimes he records the tie-dye fights and then following day plays them in normal speed. It's kind of good actually. It's a nice little idea.
Well, one thing that pointed out by Gobbins in one of I think it was one of the post M2 things, was that, yeah, all of our supers and titans are trapped. Well, not all of them. A fraction of our supers and titans are trapped. But most of the fights following M2 were just subcap fights. And those were way more fun than, 13-hour slugfests with titans on grid. Like, yeah, it's cool to kill a titan and all that stuff. But, like, it becomes the same thing with Keepstars. At first, and I can't believe I'm saying this, at first it was really cool to kill a Keepstar. Then after like the 11th Keepstar, it's like, okay, I'm done doing this. And it's the same thing with big, massive tie-dye Titan fests. Like, yeah, they're cool in small increments and once in a while, but doing that kind of stuff every single day gets really boring. And I think that like scarcity, tried to pull us away from that sort of gameplay, which again, I've really enjoyed using subcaps in capitals sparingly.
I think that was like, isn't that one of the biggest arguments for why 1DQ, may not ever happen? Because to make it happen, you need to put such a huge amount of resource on field, and it will be an absolutely huge tie-dye fest in which the defenders have the advantage already.
Yeah, and I think one of the things too is that Pappy doesn't even know if the server will survive, because no matter what, it will be one massive tie-dye, one system with tie-dye jumping into another system with tie-dye. Like, it's going to be a mess. I mean, no matter which way you think about it.
We're veering dangerously towards war chat here, guys. So I'm going to make sure. A war. Apparently, there's a war on Spud.
No one told me.
I know.
Originally this was supposed to be a war show, but I mean, I wanted to talk about CSM stuff, and I was hoping that other shows would pick up the, like, hey, what's happening in the war? But everybody's talking about CSM, so yeah, the war is getting.
I'm afraid you got another month of that.
Yeah, then it'll all be over, and you can go back to the war if it's still going on.
I mean, it's not like the war is going to be over by the time CSM is decided. Like, let's be real here.
I think you're right here. I think your comms just died again.
No, I think I'm back.
So, yeah, you're still with us. So I think that's all my questions. I think we'll give you an opportunity to ask, to basically make your own statement in terms of, well, how many people have we got here? Got just over 50 people listening. So there's your opportunity to gather your own votes. Give me a statement on your campaign. When does the voting start, or what are the
Early June?
Early June. So give me an idea. Why should I vote for you then, Spud?
Oh, just because I'm the best, obviously.
Come on, take it seriously here. Take it seriously here.
Because, as I pointed out, ESI and things of that nature have just been neglected for too long. We need to bring some focus back to it. We lost the main developer, or at least one of the main developers that was truly passionate about that particular part of the game, about a year ago, I think, and it's just been completely lost ever since. Without anyone to push it. So, if that's something you care about, and almost, I dare try and go a bit doom and gloom. If you care about the game at all, voting for somebody that's pushing that, like myself, is probably a good idea, because you all guys are gonna all lose it when Dotlan and Zkill and Eve Marketer and etc kick the bucket, and it's not necessarily going to be they die because ESI goes bang or something, but it could be, and I've seen this, but you get things like developer fatigue. People who make third-party development tools, they get pissed off with being ignored and not getting the help, and they just say, fuck it, I'm not making my thing anymore.
Yeah, just go somewhere else.
Yeah, you look at the last 2 years and the number of third-party tools that have just disappeared. If you think that's a bad thing, then
Yeah.
I'm going to try and help turn that around, shall we say?
You often see that. Are you so? Orchid. Same question goes to you. So why should we vote for you? And we'll ignore the fact you're in Volta.
I'm sensing like a real like anti-Volta theme.
The one question I would have to you, Orchid, is how does Starfleet keep his teeth so white?
I don't know. You'd have to ask him.
I know, it was just I saw him and it was like the reflection from his teeth nearly blinded me on his. It was on Pando's stream one time, and they were astonishingly white. It was kind of unsettling. But anyway, yes, back to the question. So why should I vote for you? Why should all these people listening vote for you?
Yeah, sure. So I think I would say I'm an independent candidate. Yes, I'm in Volta. Yes, we're in Null. But that isn't just the only area of the game I have experience in. I have, a broad range of experience across the whole game, and I think it's important to have that and to act as a kind of mediator between the kind of inevitably voted in, null block guys, for example, and allow other areas of the game to also get attention. And I think, just if people have a second to just take a look through some of the interviews I've done and skim my CSM post, and if you feel like I could get the job done, which I do personally feel that, then yes, your vote would be appreciated.
Hey, on. Reicher, same question applies to you, buddy.
All I'm going to say is that my platform, I want to advocate for more community involvement from CCP, not just more, but also to continue their current community involvement. I want to advocate for more interesting PvE, more interesting mining, like all that kind of stuff. And I think I'd be, especially suited to be part of the CSM because of I do have a background in, game QA, and I think that I can, use that experience to, benefit the CSM and hopefully benefit the community. Yeah, vote Reicher514. I'm also not Volta. Just kidding. I'm sorry, White. I had to take just a little. Everyone's been taking a jab at you, and I just had to get at least one.
Yeah.
I do, I know a few of the guys in Volta Orchid, and I do abuse them on a regular basis because they've obviously a lot of the guys spent most of the time abusing all these null blocks, and now they have become one. So the hypocrisy in it is obscene. But not to worry. But is there anything else you want to do, Rickard?
Yeah, I think that pretty much covers it. Does anyone have anything else that they want to get off their chest?
I think it's been a good discussion, I think.
I know. It's been all right. We allow at least one person from Volta around.
Yeah, well, I'm always here,
But if there's anyone want to ask any questions at all, guys, feel free. Now's your opportunity.
I got a grumble question.
Go ahead.
It's not as been bad this year, but you guys might remember from last year when the requirement is now that you must put a forum post if you're going to run for CSM. A couple of the sort of the never losers, the guys that are guaranteed, like Innominate, Merkelchen, Gobbins, Villy, or whoever else, when they wrote their posts, some of them would completely half-assed it and just put a single line of "I'm going to get in anyway, fuck you." How do you feel about that? Because I think that's some come on, dude.
I think that's the nature of it, right? That's the nature of how this voting system works, and being a chosen candidate inside of a null block, right? It's going to happen. It's I agree with you. And I still firmly believe that people should be voted in based on their ability and not,
On
what
merit.
ticker they have, right? But unfortunately, unless they really throw this up in the air and turn it on its head, it's not going to happen, is it?
Yeah, and there's another side of it that's actually very sad. But I think a lot of the public probably like know in their hearts, but don't acknowledge is the amount of backroom deals that go on when it comes to a CSM. Like, I don't know about you guys, but I've seen evidence of in the past, and I've actually been approached myself a couple of times now of like, if you scratch my back, I'll scratch yours. Here's our voting block. If you get your guys to vote for this block, then we'll add on your choices into our what's the word, ballot. Like, there's just so much like dirty trading in how votes work for the CSM. And it's just like, it's allowed and it's kind of human nature, but just makes you feel a bit ugh.
Yeah.
This
There
is
is
Eve, I
some-
guess.
There is a really good question, actually. It was a really nice. Well, I like it anyway. I don't know about you guys. We've got the Exorbic, or however you say that username. Which candidate will push for them to code a mass payment import system for like mass SRP, things like that? There you go. That's a nice idea, that, isn't it?
I
I
mean,
mean, you have to
anything
tell me more what you mean, though. I don't quite get it. A mass
So I
payment
think what he
import.
means. I think what the person means is that when someone's paying out SRP, like just a way to, instead of like individually send the ISK to every single character, instead like make it to where you can just get a bunch of characters and just send them a bunch of characters ISK at one time.
Can I steal that one then? Because I've got a thought on it.
I mean, sure.
So the mass sending of money like that, I'm afraid, is just not going to happen. You can protest for it all you like, but something that I do plan on pushing for, which may potentially partially solve your problem, is allowing people to at least fill out contracts via ESI. So the contract can just be the click finish button, and then it's all ready. Because maybe that would, at the very least, it would bring your clicks down, because you could just spawn up ready done contracts with sending the money to Jeff for his SRP, and you can just click accept.
So like contract templates.
Yeah. Well, we've already got an endpoint that lets you fill out an email. So why not contracts? Why not let me click a button to spawn a bunch of contracts to move my stuff that's all scattered across space, for example, into a central point?
I mean, yeah, that makes sense. I could definitely get behind that.
Yeah, I like the idea because it's very flexible. It can be used for all kinds of things. Just give us the ability to. I know they will never give us the ability to actually like finalize that contract, because you're never ever going to get the ability to transfer value through ESI, just because it's too dangerous. But the ability to at least get halfway there and let the human being look at the contract in the end and at least have a moment to think and click finish before they sign away all their money is about as good as it's going to get.
I think, like, in terms of SRP, we used to do this in Waffles when I was a director, and Volta actually uses the same system, which is Alliance Auth. And that's an out-of-game tool that allows you to kind of file for SRP, and then someone has to go through and do it manually. But I don't think it's a far stretch to allow that to be an in-game tool where people in an alliance could file a kill mail for SRP and it be submitted to like a central place where someone could go through, pick an alliance wallet division, pick a wallet division, and just kind of, yep, accept, for example.
Dare I say that's already possible? So, for example, if I'm the line member and I've just got blown up and I want SRP, I create a give me money contract to the SRP Corp, and then they accept it or deny it.
That's possible, yeah. I think there is maybe a degree of manual intervention where you might want to go and check a kill mail to make sure,
Oh
it
yeah,
is
of
a
course.
legit kill mail,
They'd put it in
and you
the
can't do it
description or
twice,
something.
You then got to keep a record of it, for example.
Got a response
It's
as
one of
well. Mass payout wouldn't be via. Yes, it would be clapboard to in game. That's the
I
idea.
get it.
Yeah,
I get it. I like the idea. I just don't know whether. I mean, we can all say that we'll try and push such an idea. I just don't know whether they take with that kind of idea. It's interesting. It's because it's got the same problem of things that can cause accidental transactions like that are kind of awkward, and they don't like to touch. Because of the whole problem of sending money to the wrong person, and then now this person says, "Oh, god damn it, your tool broke, and now I sent 10 bazillion to Matani, and now I'm screwed."
We did have another question. How can we make close and long range equally viable metas?
Close and what?
So like brawling and kiting is, I'm guessing,
Yeah,
they're getting at. I mean,
yeah.
they kind of are, but just maybe not necessarily all in the same space. Wormholers typically tend to fight a closer ranged kind of doctrines. They were much more brawly than they are now. MWDs have been working their way into wormhole space over the last 5 years or so. And yes, null is typically fought using range.
The thing is they seem to fill like totally different roles. I mean, it's like how can we compare apples to oranges? I mean, we can't. Like they're used for different things. And so making them equally viable metas, it's like, okay, but like someone who's long range, it's like they're good in different situations. And them being good in different situations makes it sort of hard to balance them, really. Because like if you're in a close range brawly doctrine and you get a warp in on a long range doctrine, the long range doctrine doesn't stand a chance. But if the long range doctrine, continuously keeps the short range guys out of range, then the short range brawly doctrine doesn't stand a chance at all. Like it's one of those things where it could be attempted, but at the end of the day, like they're used in different situations and they each have their strengths and weaknesses that pretty much counteract each other. I hope that made sense.
Maybe.
I'm not commenting because I've no idea.
I guess White was. Do you kind of share the same opinion, or are you of a different opinion?
Yeah, I mean, I think there are definitely differences in use. I mean, typically, null tends to go for the range and the speed over kind of, utility and up close that somewhere like wormhole space might go for. I don't necessarily think it's difficult. I don't know if they both have a place in in the same type of space, especially at kind of large null block levels, for example. Are you going to get people that brawl each other out at like 10, 15 kilometer ranges? I don't know. I don't know if that's ever going to happen.
Because in terms of metas at the moment, they kind of already have that to a certain degree. It's just like subs, but it's just all hacks. Subs for kiting and the rest for close range. It's kind of like that, but I'm kind of sick of the sight in my hack. So a new meta would be welcome very soon. But another question is, do you think CCP should limit the number of CSM members based on what they're pushing for? Which, did they not already do that?
So I I actually thought I had this idea, and the thing is, it could get gamed unless CCP actually themselves intervened in the process. So, for example, in CSM, of the 10 10 places, you have 3 places for null, 2 places for low sec, 1 for wormhole, 2 for
Yeah.
wormhole, whatever it might be, and you apply as a certain kind of slot. And the only way that that would ever work, because someone else would just go, oh yeah, I'm gonna apply for one that's like, I'm in a null block, but I'm going to choose a different option and then just get everyone to vote for me anyway. The only way
Yeah.
that would work is if CCP intervened in the process and said, well, hold on,
I know.
you are not a low sec representative. You come from a null block, therefore you cannot apply for this position. And I don't know whether people would, at the end of the day, it's their game, right? But
I don't think there's too. Are they not? They're quite fond of just letting it kind of go, letting it kind of organically go for itself, like grow by itself, if that makes sense, instead of intervening, as you said.
yeah, I don't know if they would do that, because I think there's already a little bit of uncertainty about the CSM amongst people in general. I've heard a lot of players come to me and say they don't believe in the CSM. They don't think the CSM does any good. What's the point in even having it? I don't know whether that's because they see it as all of the null block candidates getting in all of the time, or whether they see it as the CSM don't actually get anything done. Maybe it's a mix of both.
Well, yeah, there was a lot of chat of that, like especially going through the phase as touched on earlier on, in terms of the Rockos and stuff like that being outrageously powerful, and there was a lot of campaigning for them to be reduced, like a lot of capitals, like supers and things like that. There was a lot of campaigning, and it was clear that due to the nerfing, or that was like as a result of the influence of the CSM, that obviously a lot of caps got nerfed to the point where they actually become vulnerable targets now instead of indestructible ones. You have to catch like a super carrier in a very special situation in order to be able to kill it. Does that make sense? It was a lot of people were happily proving otherwise when it comes to the influence of the CSM, because I think it was last year there was, as I said, a lot of campaigning because due to how overpowered the Rocco was in terms of the ISK printing ability.
It's one of those things where, and Brisk put this really well, CCP will do what CCP wants sometimes, but the CSM does have an influence. Like I think a lot of the power of the CSM comes not necessarily in the big summits and things like that, because that's more like a thing that gets spread out through. I don't know if I'm explaining this very well, but that's something that sort of gets spread out across the company as a wider thing, versus the access to individual devs. Because if you want to change, even something as extreme as raw call changes, you kind of have to convince a developer as an individual to become passionate about it, to advocate with you on that point. And that's where the power comes comes in for the CSM. So the CSM does and can get these things done. But you also have to accept that there are some things that CCP has a greater plan, a higher thought of some kind that they want to achieve. And unfortunately, they will ignore is not the right word, but they will pass over.
Yeah.
I think so. The one thing I will say about the CSM in general is that, putting aside all of, who should get voted on and the voting system and so on, if at, during the term that these people serve on CSM, if even they just make one good change to the game, or manage to sway CCP's opinion on something that is, a benefit, then having the CSM is a net gain for everyone, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I would agree there for sure. Even although I'm not actually running for CSM, I would agree that obviously the influence, it would be proof that it is actually there, and it makes a difference.
And to answer the original question, I think limiting CSM members based on whatever their representation is as a core, yes, in principle, but in reality, no. It's just not viable.
Well,
I'd love to see it, but it's not going to happen.
Yeah, for sure.
I totally agree. I mean, in a perfect world, like the person who, you know, does the most work and gets out there and really puts their name out there and gets people to vote for them, like in a perfect world, they'd be the ones that are representing CSM and they'd be the ones on CSM. But that's not the world we live in. You know, EVE Online is all about, you know, a big part of the game is, you know, playing the meta. And sometimes you just gotta deal with it and play the meta. Um, Even if CCP were to put in this whole system where, you know, it's limited based off of, you know, who, based off of what you represent, like that just, it would make things so much harder because you might have a no block candidate that, you know, happens to play in low sec quite a lot, you know, and might have ideas, you know, what's to say that, you know, just because they live at a no block and are part of a no block doesn't mean to say that, you know, they do play in low sec essentially. And so the idea of CCP going in and actually limiting that type of thing just, it just wouldn't do anyone any favors, and it would just make things probably a lot worse, and people would get angry. You know, at least in this situation, you know, CCP is, you know, actually leaving it up to the community as a whole.
Yeah. I mean, the one thing I will say is that we are in a very unique position, and I don't think people should like forget that this is not something that is done in like all these other big game studios, right? I know CCP are not big in comparison to your
Mhm.
kind of Activisions of the world, but we're given a unique chance to actually get players at a, you know, an interactive level with a developer, and that doesn't happen to many other places.
I mean, it does, but not how CCP does it. Like the community doesn't get to choose who does what. Essentially, yeah. There in other places, like the community doesn't have the chance to choose who represents them, whereas the youth community does. So, yeah.
Is there anything else you want to cover at all, Richard?
Sorry, what was that?
Is there anything else you want to cover?
No, I think that about covers it. White, Dr. Spot, is there anything else that you guys want to say?
I think we're good.
Yeah, I think
Uh,
yeah, I'm good.
I just want to say, Spot, White, you two have definitely made some really good points, and you'll be making it on my ballots. Because, again, guys, and to everyone watching, you're not just voting for one person, you're voting for multiple people.
You get 10, so use them. And thank you very much. I love you too.
Yeah, thanks very much. Thanks very much for having me on.
All right. Well, that about wraps up the show. I'd like to thank all the guests for coming on this week. If you're watching the show and you like what you see, then please hit that follow button. New Eden Post streams Eve-related content throughout the week, including Trash Talk Tuesday on Tuesday, Lasers and Lace on Thursday, and Between Two Keepstars every other Sunday. Always remember to bubble wrap your Keepstars, and I'll see you next time.